and welcome to Davos Direct. I'm Shaili Chopra, bringing you the World Economic Forum and its highlights as it comes into its last and final day. The issue has been the future of capitalism, and the closing comments have been really honest and many of them tough. Here is a highlight of what Davos 2012 really holds as a peek into the rest of the 12 months. For one, we're looking at really tough choices to be made by the rest of the world, including Europe, United States and emerging markets. And part of that is the conviction that everyone's going back with, possibly a little optimism that the Eurozone will not break. It will suffer but not break. The US recovery has been pegged at 2 to 3%. However, no big reforms are expected due to an election year. We're looking at Asia, where the East is likely to continue to rise compared with the West. Asia is likely to grow and much higher than the rest of the world. But yes, the good news is it's going to have some stability. No wars, though challenges in governance will remain. For India, there's a bit of a warning signal from Davos 2012. Beware, as Indonesia and Brazil might be biting into your share. Those are the big highlights coming in from Davos as the sessions here conclude. However, we will bring you the best of Davos' top voices in this special report, as ET Now has been on top of each of them, bringing you the best interviews with the best perspective.
As we have seen a large number of CEOs, including yourself, say, government, do something. Do you think that reaction is beginning to come now?
Well, I don't think necessarily it's coming because CEOs are saying it. I think it's coming through a process of self-realization, and that things have to be brought to a head. And I think that's good in a way, that they have realized it themselves. I think the fact that people spoke up may have helped the situation.
During this huge debate around banning social networking sites, or at least controlling content on the web, there's so much of sort of uproar in terms of protesters, people who just use Facebook, Google, etc. What is your view as a technology man?
I think it's an exercise which is going to result in not much results, because it is just so pervasive. The avenues are just so many. Something which was done overground shouldn't become something which becomes underground. And then they'll just encourage a more parallel way of operating. Plus it gives us a bad image. So net, I would be advising against trying to do this, because you'll achieve very little, and the damage you'll do the country and the damage you'll do yourself is more than the gain you will get for a common citizen.
You see, in a democracy like India, Prime Minister cannot do everything. I think that reality of our governance, of our democratic governance. The state governments are equally important. The coalition politics is also, unless everybody lifts themselves beyond self-interest and begin to collaborate.
The position of the Prime Minister in India's context lately has become a weak position.
No, it's not only lately. Unless all the political parties collaborate, if their political self-interest is going to determine their actions, then everything can be stalled.
Is the chapter closed on FDI, on multi-brand retail?
You see, in democracy, it's a consultative process. You try to build a consensus. In my view, we had built a broad-based consensus, but our political opponents in particular have the reservations. I can understand the left front because of the ideological blinkers, and the BJP for partisan politics. But
is it only politics that has actually held up this decision? Otherwise, inherently, you would like FDI and multi-brand.
Well, it is held up. It's just a pause. The cabinet decision stands. It has not been taken back.
Telecom industry, in particular the mobile industry, is truly in crisis. There is no question about that. When they look at the government exchequer, they must look at the health of the industry. There needs to be a balance between what the government can extract from this industry and what is the capacity of this industry to pay.
What's the worst case scenario a company like yours would be dealing with?
Well, if the government finally decides to levy very large and high charges on spectrum, I think the outcome of that has to be only one, which is high tariffs.
Oh, I think that the emerging markets have just grown hugely over the years since 2007. They've become a lot bigger part of the world economy. They've been growing robustly, and the West hasn't been growing at all. So, no, of course that's not going to change. On the other hand, India in particular, I think, has a lot of transitions to make in terms of liberalizing the retail sector, liberalizing eventually the financial sector.
I think it's very, very clear that the outside world is rethinking the India story. Now, I think that they're overly pessimistic. Indians are overly pessimistic now. But I do think that going forward, there is some hope that we realize that we can't get growth without reform. That, we're settling for 7% growth now, saying, 9% was too good to expect. I think if we settle for 7, we go down to 5. We settle for 5, we go down to 3. We need the reforms that Professor Rogoff was talking about to energize growth again. We can't take it for granted, especially when the industrial world is slowing so much.
But the globe's not hungry for the India story right now, and that's just because India's comparatively small. India just isn't mature yet as a global emerging market. It just isn't China. It's nowhere near China. It used to be that you talked about Chindia, you put them on the same page. Nobody does that anymore. Yeah. It's like you talk about apples and elephants, right? And the elephant is a little smaller in this. The Indians have historically overperformed at Davos, and they've underperformed every other week of the year. I think this year is no exception.
Unfortunately, the euro had some other defects that the architects ignored and that remain poorly understood even today. These defects set in motion a process of disintegration that makes a political union more difficult to achieve today than it was when the euro was introduced.
I was hoping that after she said solidarity, that meant, okay, we're going to help the countries that need help. We have to have a common treasury. We have to have a fiscal framework that is more than austerity. But in the end, it was back to the same old austerity, which is not going to bring growth.
I think there's a real possibility of countries leaving the Eurozone, and I think that remains a real possibility. The challenge is that it's become a very complex problem requiring a combination of very good technical leadership but also very strong political leadership, and it's not quite clear to me where that's going to come from.
Clearly, members of the Eurozone are going to make a special effort because that's where the center of the crisis is. And it's a region of the world that can actually afford to help itself. So that would be my first principle. The Europeans have to help themselves even more than they have so far.
A fiscal union will start with rules which assure the countries can stand on their own. And that's why it's so important, because we have to rebuild trust amongst the countries of the euro area. And hopefully the European Council that will be held at the end of this month will make a decisive step towards this treaty.
We still face tremendous challenges as a country. We're still repairing the damage caused by a devastating financial crisis that still have huge lasting impact on the basic fortunes of most Americans. Unemployment is still very high. Housing is still very, very weak. Construction is very weak. People still have too much debt. They're bringing that down, and that's still going to take a while to repair.
I don't think the whole global economy will fall into recession. We at the World Bank and the IMF have forecast slower global growth this year, and we've tried to focus that there are some serious dangers out there. And so we were counseling developing countries that some of them that were going to have to roll over bonds to try to do it earlier in the year where they had some liquidity.
India needs about 80 to 100 million jobs over the next 10 years. Africa needs 125 million. Latin America needs 40 million. U.S. needs 20 million. There's a big number for China, for the Middle East, and of course we know the issue in Europe as well. You put them all together, that's about 400 million new jobs in the next 10 years. That's 40 million jobs a year. That's going to take a lot of effort. That's going to take a lot of focus. And it's going to take a lot of growth.
Still 1 billion people going to bed hungry every night in this world, and the number is going up since we've had the crisis in 2008. In fact, it went up by 40 to 60 million. There's still a child dying of hunger every 6 seconds. It is impossible to live in an equilibrium or a stable world if we don't address the issues of food security, which have been underlying many of the economic discontents or riots in many of the countries.